Welcome to the Opinionated Benchwarmers Podcast, episode 183. Opinionated Benchwarmers are back to do what we do best, and that's discuss sports. Today we got Ramon in here. Los is gonna join us next week. But Ramon, man, what's happening with you? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good, man. It's a busy time, a lot of stuff going on life-wise. But it's always good when we can take some time out and have a chance to give our listeners what they're looking for, what they're waiting for. So I always get enthused, to have this kind of opportunity just to pretty much kick back, talk sports. You can't really beat that too much. So, but how about everything on your end, man? How you doing?
Yeah, same here, man. Just continuously grinding. Obviously, this not what we do full time yet, but just like you said, just having some time to step away from real life and how life be life
Yeah.
and to discuss what we passionate about in that sports. We watch it all day. So I mean, we could start off. We excited today, man. We was excited last episode. Obviously, we was talking about just what the Lakers are the last couple episodes and what Luka meant to the squad and what he could do. And we saw a little small sample size this past game when the Lakers obviously blew out the Denver Nuggets, which is really exciting to see this past Saturday. And then you got Luka making his debut versus his old team, the Mavs, his first time playing them. So we're expecting a big game out of him tonight. But how great did Luka look in that game on Saturday? I know that we're almost a week past, a couple days past, but it's worth talking about
Yeah.
the outlook of the team and how that's changed our trajectory.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting, as you mentioned, is how things have changed. And it's really a lot of too in the eyesight of like a lot of the national media, because as we talked separately, you were talking about, not letting them switch up and try to get on the bandwagon. But we know that a lot of the talk, after the Luka trade was made and things of that sort was, hey, how is this team going to look defensively? How are they going to, accommodate that? Will Luka and LeBron be able to play together? And you heard just kind of a lot of questions about what the second half of the season might look like, what kind of limitations this team may have. And one of the biggest things that people would talk about and even got mentioned was, oh yeah, the Lakers are gonna have to avoid the Denver Nuggets. They won't have any answer for Jokic. So that's something that they want to make sure that as the season progresses, that they don't end up in the same path. And really honestly, with us, of course, having a close eyesight on the Lakers, first of all, we'd already seen some of the things that got deployed in that game against Denver were ways that the Lakers had recently schemed somewhat against some of the bigs that they played. Before even the Luka trade, they took Karl Anthony Towns completely out of the game when they played him. They also did, they took Zubac out of the game when they played the Clippers. And saying all that to say, I think that the Lakers really showed the national media and showed really the nation as a whole and the world or whatever of what can be done or what is the possibilities like of this team. You saw a situation in which I don't know if we've seen the likes of it before, where it's from just a sheer primary ball handler standpoint, like LeBron is playing with somebody that really is going to command the attention, completely of the defense and is really going to command the best defender. Even when he played with guys, and no slight to, Kyrie or Wade or what they represented because they were great in what they did. But they didn't always, of course, command the number one, wing defender, and that's what Luka does. And he showed us, of course, his first couple of games he was a little bit out of shape, but he's showing us that he's getting back into that basketball shape. And you just saw him come out really, I don't want to belabor it too much, but you saw him come out in that first quarter and really announce himself and show, okay, I'm getting back. I'm coming back. 16 points in that first quarter really showed, off the bat that, you're finally getting that version of Luka. And man, it seems like the sky is the limit, honestly, for this team at this point because of the way also too that they play collectively on the other end.
Yeah, I mean, he had a vintage Luka game. He had 32, 7, and 10. We're flirting with a triple double. That's what we used to seeing from Luka and how great he is and how it has been. I don't need to rehash it. Five-time first team All NBA, and the kid's only 25 years old. So that just specifies how great he is. But Ramon, I'll say this, and I know you were impressed when you talk about the defensive end. We've been number one defensive rate in the last 15 games. Now I
Yep.
get a couple of those games included AD, but the majority of those games and the greater percentage was without him. How great has JJ Redick and his coaching staff has been this year in scheming, like you alluded to. And Jokic had a triple double, but it was a very modest triple double at best. And
Did you
I
hear
just
that?
the
People
defensive,
saying called it a Draymond triple double.
yeah, I didn't see that, but that's funny. That's
So he
good.
had a Draymond triple double.
Look, I mean, when you think about that and you look at the Lakers and what they are defensively and what Dorian Finney-Smith, right? Plus 22. He only scored 3 points. So,
Yeah,
I mean, what he's meant to the team, what Rui's meant defensively, and what Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt just changed the whole outlook of our squad and what he means. And I think that you have to look at the plus minus of these players to know their impact and what they bring to the squad. I think that, and then you sprinkle in JJ's little mix and the coaching staff because he got two head coaches on his bench, and he has a phenomenal coaching support staff. But JJ is a basketball mind, and he gets a lot of credit, him and his staff, for how they have us playing defensively. And I love what JJ said in one of his interviews. He was just like, "Hey, in playing in the NBA just takes effort. It's
yeah,
who's you got to play hard, and you're seeing it. Even LeBron is getting real busy for the last month. He's been playing really well defensively, and it's just interesting to see now that we are creeping up. Now we're continued contenders. Now we're dark horses, and we were written off. Now JJ is coach of the year.
yeah.
It's interesting to see that now.
Yeah, no, the narrative is definitely changing. And I think the thing that people weren't really recognizing or really paying attention to this team is that although, from just a traditional center standpoint, in which before I even say this, I do want to give Jackson Hayes a little bit of credit because he has been
Yeah,
playing better than what people have expected him to do and play in that role. But I think that because people that we didn't have the traditional big that, you can have down there that can be able to kind of guard Jokic one on one or things of that sort, that they didn't pay attention that this is still a big team, like a bunch of
yeah.
big wings. I mean, you talk about, LeBron 6'8", 6'9", Vando when he's coming in 6'9", 6'10", DFS 6'8", 6'9", Rui 6'9". You look at even Austin Reaves really from a starting lineup standpoint being your smallest guy, and he's what 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". So, when you really look at this team, overall, they're not a small team. They just don't have that traditional big that you would look for, but it's the way that they're playing, so connected on that end of the floor. I think that it was a blessing in disguise that honestly the Dan Hurley thing didn't work out because JJ is showing that to me he has the makings of being a very good coach for a long time. Um,
And Dan Hurley, I'm glad you brought him up. Connecticut UConn is out of the top 25 after being rated in the top five coming into the preseason. So, I mean, I love it.
yeah,
On top of him telling a ref that he's the best in the business, don't turn your back on me. But we'll get to that. That's
yeah,
not relevant here.
yeah,
But Ramon, I mean, not to move on. We spend a lot of time on the Lakers here. We're Lakers fans. I'm not ashamed to say. We're not ashamed to say. But one more
yeah.
point I want to point out. I did say an interesting tweet here where it posed the question: should LeBron, Luka, and Reeves be considered a big three? So I posed that question to you as my brother. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that honestly, when you look at it, two aspects. One, I wouldn't want it mentioned as much because you want to kind of stay floating under the radar a little bit with that piece. So I don't love it being mentioned, but when you actually look at what Austin Reeves represents, I saw a comparison that they had out there with obviously when people saw Phoenix coming together. They looked at Phoenix as Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal being a big three because they felt that the three of them, represent, stars at each of those levels. Well, if you really pay attention to it right now, as far as Austin Reeves' production as opposed to Bradley Beal's production, Austin Reeves is a more productive player than Bradley Beal at this point. So if you really look at it, Austin Reeves to me is that perfect third type option that really you could classify this as a big three because Austin Reeves is a fringe all-star in the way that he plays. And we've seen when LeBron and Luka were out, we saw the
Preach,
45, 7, and 7.
preach,
We see at moments, even when Bron and Luka on the floor, there's still moments where Austin Reeves is generating the offense and is getting buckets. And he is a tough cover for anyone that's out there right now. So off of what Austin Reeves does represent as a talent right now, yes, it's a big three. Do I want it being talked about too much as a big three? Maybe not. Because, yeah, keep letting them float under the radar a little bit, and then y'all come see playoff time. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know what your thoughts on it are.
So my thoughts on it is a question to you. I told you back then before the season started that Austin Reeves will be averaging more points than Paul George. You call me crazy. That's what's going on, and it adds on to your about him being more productive than Bradley Beal. He's more productive than Paul George. Those are two All NBA players historically in their prime. And you know the thing about Austin Reeves, if you look at that game, you had four 20-point scores in that game with Rui, AR, LeBron, obviously, and Luka. That just lets you know right there, like you said, Austin Reeves. I mean, it's time now, and I think even us as fans, I think that us watching every game and watching Austin Reeves and his production, I think we kind of sort of couldn't take it for granted. I know I did. It wasn't until he dropped the 40 points. I'm like, okay, nah, this dude is legitimately him. And he carried the team with no LeBron, no Luka, dropped 42. I was like, okay, he is him. What he's doing, and you pay a close attention to him, and he's really a spark. And you know, just to wrap up the Lakers thing, if you don't have anything else, but just to consider that we have really three, not only a big three, we have three people that can ignite the offense, can make the players around them better. And when you talk about staggering minutes in the playoffs or staggering minutes down the stretch, I mean, the defense cannot take a they cannot take it off. They can't be like, oh, Luka's on the bench, we're good, or LeBron's on the bench, we're good. No, you still have Austin Reeves that can ignite that offense. I'm loving what I'm seeing. It seems like the culture is good, and it seems like these are players that believe. Now, to wrap this up, we got obviously we have as we record this. By the time you hear this game will be played. But you got the Lakers taking on Dallas. You got Luka taking on his former team, and I want to know from you how many points Luka dropping tonight.
Okay, so I'm gonna say I'm gonna give him a smooth 37 tonight. Luka drops 37.
I'm gonna go 40 because I think he could have had 40 Saturday night, but we was blowing him out. So I think he only played like maybe 20, like maybe he might have hit 30 minutes, but I don't think I think
Yeah.
he might have. I want to say he played on like 28 minutes. So I'm gonna go 40. Uh, I think that he's gonna come on with a vengeance. I think that Dallas really pissed him off, and they should have, and we love it. Lakers
Yeah.
fans, we're gonna benefit from it. Um, so, I mean, just transitioning. Obviously, the Nuggets will be there toward the end. That has been our Achilles heel, if you will, the last three playoff series. Well, we didn't make the playoffs this past season, but the previous two. Um,
Well,
if
you talking about the one before that, but
yeah,
yeah, we did.
the
You
one
talking about
before that,
like two with the Westbrook?
right?
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, Westbrook, yeah, we didn't. But if you look at these standings, man, they're wild, man. When you look at it, we could talk about the East because I think that that's easy to do. You got Detroit that has won 7 games in a row. They're on a 7 game winning streak. They got them. They're playing pretty well. I'm happy for that coach, former Cleveland coach. I didn't think he should have been let go from Cleveland, but how can I say that? Because Cleveland's number 2 in the East right now.
Number
But
one in the East.
how do you number 1 in the East? Yeah, I'm behind on my reporting here, but if you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers and they're very top heavy as the East historically is always is. Do you believe that Cleveland kind of is? Do you believe that Boston is still the team to beat?
Oh yeah, Boston is 100% the team to beat. If we really just say it for what it is, Boston is still the most talented team in the league. When you look at really just that starting five, and you have Tatum and Brown, what they represent, you throw Derek White in there, obviously what he represents, Drew Holiday, Porzingis. That 1 through 5 is the toughest starting five that you have in the league. And then obviously some of the bench contributors that you have as well too. They still are when they're focused and clicking, they're still the measuring stick of the NBA right now at this point. I know that right now the Cavs have a better record than them. It kind of reminds me, and I'm not going to say it's this much of a disparity, but it kind of reminds me of the days when, of course, you would have the Cleveland Cavaliers in the LeBron era, and you may have the Atlanta Hawks that were the number 1 seed or something of that sort that's able to kind of get it rolling during the regular season. But when it gets down to business in the playoffs, we all knew kind of how those matchups were going to go. And that's kind of honestly how I see the East right now at this point. That Cleveland is going to finish as the number one seed, but Boston is the best team right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Boston is just so deep. When you look at Porzingis, Jalen Brown, you got perennial 2A, 2B players right there. And then you got Tatum playing the way he's playing. I think that it is really underestimated, if that's possible, underrated, and how he impacts a game, not only on the offensive end, and we all know he's a special offensive player, but what he can do with his rebounding, he can defend, and I'm not just saying defend the wing, he can defend. We've seen him defend against Cat. We've seen him defend against centers, and I think that he's playing with the poise here, and I think that to me, he kind of when you look at Jalen Brown in the year that he had last year, and then you look at Jason Tatum, it was kind of confusing to see who was the real number one, but I think this year Tatum has definitely separated himself. And then you look at Derek White, defensively, and Drew Holiday. I don't know how this team was allowed to be constructed. I mean, they're deep from top to bottom. Like you
Thank
say,
the
the cream
Milwaukee
always
Bucks.
right. And the cream always rises to the top. And these guys are a team. And I think that even though I got a lot of respect for Cleveland and how deep they are, I think Cleveland is the future. I think Boston is now, because when I look at Cleveland, the number one seed right now, they're headed by 6 games in front of the Celtics. So like you say, they'll probably finish better than them. But you look at their team. Their team is pretty deep too. When you look at Darius Garland and those and that bunch, and Donovan Mitchell, I think they'll go as far as he takes them. Honestly, just how special of a scorer he is. But Jared Allen and just how good he is on and what his role that he plays there, and then Mobley is looking like, you looking like a maybe an NBA first team in the next couple of years. I think that you have a real strong core there, and they're well coached too, and they play defense. So, but I think experience definitely weighs, and I think everything in the East goes through Cleveland. And I mean, I think goes through Boston. I think
Yeah.
Boston will probably come out of the East.
Yeah. No, I agree. You said it.
But on the West side, we got the Thunder, obviously, and they are a really good team, and it looks like Shea probably is having an MVP year. Probably all but will get it unless Luke. I mean,
Jokic.
unless Joker just goes dumb like the last 25 games, he get 25 triple doubles or something like that. But I think that the Thunder is one of those teams to me that are gonna be reckoned with for years to come. In my opinion, I just think that Shea, the way that he impacts the game with his playmaking and his scoring, he's a walking 30 points right now. It just kind of reminds you of them Harden days in Houston, how scoring just comes at ease to him. But what do you think the Thunder? What do you see them? Do you ultimately think the West will go through them as far as you believe in them as a number one seed as opposed to Cleveland?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that if you had to state it right now, I think that, OKC has been obviously they've been the most complete team in the West. Obviously, where they stand from a seeding standpoint, I think that they're a pretty complete team. When you even look beyond Shea and you look at, Jalen Williams and you look at Chet finally getting healthy, and being able to kind of roll again, and you look at what they have in Lou Dort from a defender standpoint, I think that they're a pretty complete team. I still have some questions as it relates to playoffs, from them just because I haven't seen it. I saw them get beat and ousted by Luka and Kyrie last year in the semifinals. I saw them get beat in six. And so I still have some questions as it relates to them. I'm not necessarily picking them right now at this point to go to the finals. Part of that could be a little homerism there, if you're feeling where I'm coming from, but I don't know between in my thought process right now, I think that, LA and Denver, I would probably pick either of them in a series with OKC. And people may call me crazy for this. They may call me crazy. But if Dallas gets fully healthy, I think that Dallas could give OKC a good run as well too. I think that Dallas is a squad that slept on just because they so hurt right now, and especially their big depth is depleted. But if they are healthy, Dallas is a pretty complete team as well too. So, with that being said, OKC are probably as far as coming out of the West, most people would have them as the favorites. They're probably maybe third on my list or so.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Lakers. They're 3.5 games out of number two, and Denver's number two right now. So, I mean, Denver, we just blew them out. So, to me, outside of the Thunder, it's pretty wide open to me. What I think with the Thunder, it's not crazy to say that the Lakers could. There is a path where the Lakers could make it to the NBA Finals. That's not my bias speaking. But when you think about the Thunder, and like you mentioned, in their experience in the playoffs, they're a fairly young team. I think that they will be what we have to deal with for years to come. But I think with LeBron's experience and his championship experience, I mean, and then JJ and that coaching staff and them scheming, I think we could make it. I don't believe in Memphis. I don't
Yeah.
believe in Memphis. I don't know what's going on with Ja Morant, but he's looked a shell of himself in what we're used to seeing and how special he's been. So I don't know if he's not gonna be playing the way he's been playing. We're used to seeing him maybe the last 3 years. I don't think that they have what it takes there. So I mean, and in Houston, the only team that really kind of really could scare me a little bit, I think that they're better than what I thought they were going to be, and that's Golden State with Jimmy Butler. It seems like the arrival of Jimmy Butler has revived Steph Curry. Like
Yeah.
Steph Curry has not been playing the last 4 games. Steph Curry looked like Steph Curry of old. 5 threes made a game plus a
Yeah.
game. Like just can't miss. Like
Yeah.
so, Golden State they do. I mean, I don't know, man. Golden
Yeah.
State look kind of. They look like they might avoid. I wouldn't be surprised if they avoided the play in. If
Yeah.
that's too crazy for me to say.
Well, it's really not because everything is so bunched up in the West, honestly, right now that I think it was funny. I was seeing a Warriors fan tweeted because Warriors fans don't really like the Lakers and all of that kind of stuff like that. And he was pretty much saying, I think if the Warriors win their next three and the Lakers win their next three or four, then the Warriors would be in the sixth seed because we would be beating teams that's ahead of them, and helping them to notch up. So pretty much our success, their success may be connected to our success. But like you said, nah, it has shocked me a little bit because I think that obviously we had a podcast after that trade and we kind of underrated that trade a little bit, but they have been playing pretty
Yeah.
well, with Jimmy there. I thought it was kind of intriguing. I don't know if you saw it, but after Steph hit that shot and did, his little celebration, did you see Clay on the bench, like not looking whatsoever, just looking like straight ahead, like not wanting to acknowledge anything? I
Yeah,
was like,
he just seen it up close. It don't feel good when it's being done to you.
yeah, yeah. So, like you said, they could be interesting, but in the West in general, it can be interesting. I think it's a little bit more straightforward in the East. We know we probably got about two or three contenders out there over at the East, but with the West, it can get a little interesting
Yeah.
in the West.
I don't even know how the Grizzlies got up there. And I watch a
Yeah,
lot of NBA. Like I'm like, what are they like? They do not belong. I watched them the other night against I don't know who it was, but it was maybe the Timberwolves, and I was like, what am I watching? Like they're not a. I don't see it, and I don't know what's wrong with Ja. That gotta be investigated. I don't know if he hurt. I don't know what, but he just doesn't look the same. But yeah, and then the Rockets, they are pretty. They've been sliding as of late, but at a certain point, like 3 weeks ago, they was the number two seed. So like you say, everything's bunched up, but they still are a pretty good young team. Uh, I just think that they are probably a couple of years away. But Duque is a really good coach, if I'm saying it right. Hopefully, I'm saying it right. Coach Duque or whatever. Is that
uh,
right? Duque
Udoka,
or Udoka,
Udoka,
Udoka.
Ime
No,
Udoka.
no offense, man. But yeah, he got him rolling. So the West should be very interesting there. But yeah, that wraps up the NBA for me. As far as hard line, I mean, I think the last thing we probably didn't cover since the last time we recorded is Wemby with a blood clot in his shoulder. So obviously, that's something serious that has ended careers when you think about Chris Bosh. But then you have good stories like the gentleman at the Lakers signed who had a blood clot and came back. So we're just hoping for a speedy recovery for him. But that does impact the Spurs a little bit there after acquiring Darren Fox.
Yeah, no, that does impact them. I think that, obviously the players aren't going to think this, but fans are kind of going into their tank mode and hoping that they can get into now the Cooper flag sweepstakes. And, I think that they own maybe Atlanta's pick if it's like protected or something this year too. So I think that they're kind of in the hopes of, hey, let's go get two top five picks now at this point. But Man, just want to see Wemby get healthy. You never want to see things like that. Like you mentioned, Chris Bosh. On the other end, I know that there's something similar that Brandon Ingram, dealt with some years ago, and he came back, fine and things of that sort. So, just hopefully when you have a talent like Wemby, that's a generational, transcendent talent, you hope that those guys can stay healthy.
I mean, it was fun to watch. He was one of those people that I never been that excited to watch a Spurs game. And I know
Yeah.
people gonna say the Spurs had some glory years. They were beating my Lakers, so wasn't happy to see them. But this he's just a guy when he's on the TV. You got to watch him
Yeah.
play, and hoping to see him play in person. So hoping for a
Definitely.
speedy recovery. And I know it's nothing about basketball is more important things than basketball. Obviously, we want his health to be fine, but definitely one of the future faces of the league potentially. And I think that he has a long career ahead of him. So hopefully for a speedy recovery for him. And
Definitely.
then Ramon, lastly but not leastly, we couldn't go without mentioning it. The NFL Combine is this weekend. Um, that's going to be an exciting time with what is being reported as one of the more deeper drafts that we've had in years. So I mean, we have plenty of time to get into it. Especially, I want to get into it more. See the results of the combine, but there are some stories that come out. The rumor mill is turning. We'll take it, with a grain of salt. It is reported that Shadur Sanders, which we'll know definitively as the combine takes place, but he's not going to throw. And we've seen this with different players. We saw it last year with Marvin Harrison not wanting to do drills here. Jaden Daniels sat out the combine as well. No, he didn't set out the combine, did he? Oh, he set out the pro
I
day.
think, yeah. Nah, he did his pro day, I thought. I think
Yeah,
that,
he did his pro day, but
yeah.
he didn't
I
do his
don't think
pro.
he,
Day.
yep.
Yeah. But just either way, the point is that you have guys do this and to their benefit. And just to add context, Shador Sanders, quarterback coming out of Colorado, he was projected early on after the season. It would be either him or Cam Ward that would go number one, but that has since changed the closer we get to the combine. The draft will be in April. But him not throwing, how does that impact him in your eyes? And do you think it's smart in your opinion?
Honestly, I don't think that it has a negative impact. I think that when you look at this draft, to me, there is a clear top two, as it relates to, I'm saying from the quarterback position, as you already alluded to, between he and Cam Ward. And I really think that when you're looking at quarterbacks at the top of the draft, those two guys are going to go within the top five picks. I don't think that Shador not throwing is going to cause him to just crater out of the top 10 and top 15, and people are just going to be unsure of who he is as a prospect. I think that he's done enough, put enough film, out there to signify and show that he should be a top two quarterback taken. And I don't think that at this point, to me, he runs the risk of losing more if something doesn't materialize and go well than gaining from going out there and throwing. So I really don't have any problem with it. It's also too, in general, just the combine, completely for Shador, like it's not he's not the type of guy that needs it. Years ago, Anthony Richardson is the type of guy who needed a combine. He didn't have the greatest film, of course, at Florida, and he needed to go out there and show that he was a freakish athlete. For Shador, I don't think that he needs it from a throwing standpoint or anything else. So it's not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think that Shador maybe historically is probably the best QB prospect that we've seen. But I do think that he is, like you mentioned, a top two quarterback in this class. But when you compare him to other classes, I don't really feel like he's there yet as far as it. But I do think he's a pretty good quarterback. And, I did see some resemblance to, I know people gonna call me crazy, but, Tom Brady. I think that he's a guy that doesn't really rely on his athletic ability. He relied on it a little bit more this season, but the guy's a pocket passer. He can make the throws. I think that he has a good arm on him. But I think even between him and Cam Ward, I think I prefer Cam Ward a little bit more than Shador. But they have some quarterback needy teams, obviously in the top 10 when you look at it. So it's hard for me to believe that he would slide past the Jets in that draft if he's not drafted before by either the Browns or the Titans. Or the Giants need a quarterback as well. But you have his running mate there, Travis Hunter. And there's been rumblings that he we don't know if he's going to play cornerback or wide receiver, or he's going to try to play both. I should rather say, but we know that he's going to participate as a cornerback in the combine. And I will tell you, my opinion is that I think that that's probably the best move. Because to me, on film, no matter what he did in college, I think he's more of a natural corner than a wide receiver. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that corner is the right move for him. I do think that he's the type, of course, obvious athlete that we've seen that can excel either way, but I would say corner over receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be tough for him to play both ways. Now, I
Oh
would
yeah.
probably say if I had a team, if I was a coach, maybe get creative and put him on offense sometimes. But I definitely would want that athleticism on corner. I think that he shines at corner. That's what he was recruited as well. So, we'll see there. Now, the Titans also just very very early in this process, and we'll get to that. Like I want to kind of reaffirm. We'll get to that later on later episodes. But one of the interesting reports that we saw today is that the Titans GM said that they might be looking to shop uh, number one pick. And like the kids say, do you think it's cap? Maybe they're not saying it no
Yeah,
more.
right, right. I think it has the possibility to. I think that the thing about it, when you have the number one pick, like you need to leverage it as much as you can. So, if there's a team out there that's willing to give you, like they say, the Godfather offer or things of that sort, you have to put yourself in position to be able to accept that. So if I were to say it at this point, I don't think that they're going to trade it. I don't think that they should or do have any confidence in Will Levis. So I think that experiment should be over, and you should be looking to draft your
It should have
quarterback
never
right there.
started, man. It should
Yeah.
have never started.
So I believe that to me, when you have that number one pick, especially with what we see the QB position does for you. I mean, we were able to see, even though he was a number two pick, what Jaden Daniels did for that Washington Commanders franchise just came in and changed that franchise from day one. So we understand the importance of having the right guy at that QB position. And I think that when you have that opportunity to pick your guy, I don't think that you pass that up. But to answer your question, um, it's hard for me to say it's completely cap. I think that they're doing exactly what they need to do at the number one spot right now, which is to get as much, have as much leverage as that pick as you can.
Yeah, I think no need to get cute here. I mean, you mentioned Will Levis. I mean, maybe they looking toward next year when it's expected that Arch Manning is probably going to be a generational quarterback coming out of college next year. Maybe you take a Abdul Carter who's going to impact the game, and maybe plan to be bad another year and maybe be up there to take Arch. I don't know. But I mean, it kind of makes me, think, like to what you said. If you think that Cam Ward is the guy, you think Shador is the guy, you think Jackson Dart's the guy, go get the guy. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you draft them at. It's 2, 3 years ago and where you at as a franchise, So I think you have to get who you believe in, and hopefully they do their research. I don't fault them for putting that out there because, like you said, you have to dangle that first pick. That is valuable. You have teams that have needs, a team that wouldn't hesitate to go grab a Cam Ward if they don't think that he's going to fall to him. But Abdul Carter is a special talent, and we all know that one of the most valuable players is a defensive guy. This is a quarterback NFL league, and you have to have guys that can get after it. And Abdul Carter, with his measurables and what he's done on film and in college at Penn State, has proven to be one of those guys that you might want to have on the team and you don't want to play against. So, I mean, I don't fault them for dangling. I'm with you on that. I do think that you have to see what you can get. And if you get an offer that you can't refuse, maybe jump back and get a couple picks because I think that you have a very talented bunch up there. And like we mentioned, man, I'm hearing that, it's being reported that maybe 10 running backs will be off the board between the first and the second round. So, I mean, when you're hearing stuff like that, again, the rumor mill, early reports, everything like that. But I do think just watching college football, there are a lot of talented backs in this draft, a
Yeah.
lot of talented backs. And we'll get to the naming them later down the line of which of ones of our favorites. But when you look at the receiver class, this is a deep receiver class that you have here. So it's a deep draft, and I think it's going to be one of the more interesting ones we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that you nailed it. It's going to be very interesting. Obviously, we still early off in the process, but definitely can't wait to unpack this more as it gets closer to the draft.
Yeah, I'm gonna be locked in on the combine this weekend, I guess, man, trying to check it out. But Man, I think we wrapped it up again, man. We appreciate you for listening to us up until this point. We appreciate our love and support. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast on wherever you like to listen to your podcast at. And then make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel as well. Hit the bell so you're notified when we drop content. And make sure that you are subscribed to the channel for when we drop that sports content that you love to hear. Until next time, we're out of here.
Later.